My parents handed my brother $120,000 while I got nothing toward a home. They told me I was the failure, so I cut off contact. 2 years later, my brother drove past my property and called our dad yelling, "You need to see this." Can you even imagine being told by your own parents, straight to your face, that you're a failure, not worth investing in, while they hand your brother a cool $120,000 for a house? That's my story. And let me tell you, that cutting remark ignited a fire in me that changed absolutely everything. My name's Alton, I'm 34 now, and I'm a construction contractor from Pennsylvania. Growing up in a comfortable, middle-class suburb of Pittsburgh, appearance was everything. Our house wasn't the biggest, but my parents, Richard and Elaine, made sure it was always immaculate, at least on the surface. Dad was a senior loan officer, Mom sold real estate, the picture of proper suburban professionals. And they expected nothing less from their sons. From my earliest memories, the family dynamic was painfully clear. My brother, Kyle, 3 years younger, was the golden child, destined for greatness. Me? I was the problem child. Not because I caused trouble, but because I didn't fit their rigid definition of success. Kyle was naturally brilliant, acing tests without breaking a sweat. I, on the other hand, would study for hours just to pull off B-minuses. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" became the soundtrack of my childhood. Every parent-teacher conference ended with my father's tight-lipped disappointment and my mother's forced smile, assuring teachers they'd work with me. What my parents never saw, or perhaps chose not to see, were my own talents. While Kyle delved into math and science, I had this intuitive understanding of how things worked. By 10, I could dismantle and reassemble almost anything mechanical. I could look at a broken appliance and just know how to fix it. My hands seemed to understand before my mind could even articulate it. When I was 14, I spent an entire summer building a treehouse. Not some flimsy platform, but a legitimate 2-story structure with real windows, a trapdoor, and even a small deck. I scavenged materials from construction sites, always asking permission, and was often given extra supplies by impressed contractors. Neighbors would stop by, marveling at what that carpenter boy was creating. Mr. Jenkins, a retired architect, would bring me lemonade and talk about load-bearing designs. Mrs. Peterson across the street even told my mom she'd never seen such talent in someone so young. For once, I genuinely thought my parents might be proud. The day I finished, I eagerly led them out to see it. My father glanced up for maybe 10 seconds before checking his watch. "Well, I hope you're done playing with wood now. Summer's almost over, and you need to focus on getting your grades up this year." My mother patted my shoulder absently. "It's cute, honey, but college applications are just a few years away. Kyle's already doing advanced placement prep, you know." That night, I heard them in the kitchen. "The Jenkins boy is already taking college courses," my father grumbled. "And ours spends 3 months hammering together a glorified playhouse." It felt like a punch to the gut. High school was more of the same. Kyle joined the debate team, the math club, played tennis, all college application-appropriate activities. They bought him a professional-grade tennis racket when he made varsity. Me? I joined the school's construction club, but I had to save every penny from my weekend job bagging groceries just to buy basic tools. I remember helping build a wheelchair ramp for a community center my junior year. It was even featured in the local paper. I brought the article home, hoping for a shred of recognition. My father barely looked at it. "Community service looks good on applications, but you should be doing something more academic." Meanwhile, Kyle's room became a shrine to achievement, overflowing with trophies and certificates. Our den was converted into his private study. When I asked for a small corner of the garage for a workbench, it was denied. Too noisy, would distract Kyle. Despite all this, I loved my brother. Kyle never asked for the golden child role. When we were alone, he was just my goofy little brother. Sometimes, he'd sneak into the treehouse with me, away from the pressure of perfection, and we'd just talk about video games or girls. Those rare moments, when it was just us, without our parents' crushing expectations, were the closest I ever felt to having a normal family. By senior year, our paths had completely diverged. I maintained decent grades, mostly Bs, with the occasional A in shop or technical drawing. But next to Kyle's perfect academic record, I might as well have been failing. When Kyle was accepted to Princeton early decision, my parents threw a massive party. "Our son, the Princeton man," my father beamed, arm around Kyle. I stood in a corner, invisible in my own home. No one asked about my plans. No one seemed to care. Kyle's high school graduation was an extravagant affair. My parents rented a private room at the fanciest restaurant in Pittsburgh. Family flew in from everywhere. My father gave a 20-minute speech about Kyle's achievements, then presented him with keys to a brand new Audi. "You'll need reliable transportation at Princeton," he declared, bursting with pride. 3 years earlier, when I graduated, we had dinner at a casual chain restaurant. My gift was a used laptop. I wasn't going to a 4-year college. I'd been accepted to a technical college with an excellent construction management program. When I announced my decision, you'd think I'd told them I was joining a cult. Trade school? My mother repeated the words like they were a curse. But what about State University? They accepted you. My father dismissed it. Construction management isn't a real degree. You're settling for less when you should be aiming higher. I tried to explain. The 98% job placement rate, the high demand for graduates, earning good money in 2 years instead of accumulating massive debt. None of it mattered. In their minds, without a prestigious university name, I was throwing my life away. "We didn't raise our son to work with his hands," my mother said, as if manual labor was shameful. The bitter irony that she sold houses built by people like me was completely lost on her. I started trade school with zero financial support from my parents. Every penny came from my savings and a small merit scholarship. I worked evenings and weekends at a hardware store, often taking extra shifts. Meanwhile, Kyle's every expense was covered: tuition, housing, meal plans, books, spending money. He never knew what it was like to wonder if he could afford dinner. Despite the challenges, I thrived. For the first time, I was learning things that truly interested me. My instructors recognized my aptitude. Mr. Rodriguez, my construction management professor, would often stay late, discussing advanced techniques, introducing me to industry contacts. "You've got something special, Alton," he told me. "You understand both the craft and the business side. That's rare." I graduated at the top of my class. My parents didn't attend the ceremony. Kyle had a tennis tournament that weekend, and that took priority. I told myself it didn't matter. I'd already secured a job with Patterson Construction, a respected local firm, starting as an assistant project manager. It was at Patterson Construction that I met Melissa. She came to the office to drop off lunch for her uncle. I was in the break room when she walked in, and I immediately made a fool of myself, spilling coffee all over my shirt. Instead of being embarrassed for me, she grabbed napkins, helped me clean up, and laughed, telling me about the time she dumped a plate of pasta on herself on a first date. Melissa was a nursing student, working evenings at the hospital to pay for school. We understood each other's drive, our work ethic. On our first date, we talked for hours about our dreams: her desire to work in pediatric care, my ambition to run my own construction business. Unlike my family, she never once questioned whether my goals were worthy. She just asked how she could support me. Our relationship moved fast. Within 6 months, we were talking about a future. I brought her home to meet my parents during the Christmas holiday. Kyle was back from Princeton, and naturally, the entire dinner conversation revolved around his amazing college experience. My father grilled him about classes, professors, networking. My mother wanted all the details on his social life, his Ivy League friends. When Kyle mentioned a summer internship with a Wall Street firm, you'd think he'd won the Nobel Prize. My parents were absolutely glowing with pride. Finally, after nearly 2 hours, Melissa politely interjected, mentioning that I'd recently been promoted to full project manager, the fastest promotion in the firm's history. There was a brief, awkward silence. My mother just said, "Oh, that's nice, dear," and immediately turned back to Kyle. "Now, tell us more about that finance professor. Didn't you say he has connections at Goldman Sachs?" In the car ride home, Melissa was fuming. "Do they always treat you like that? Like you're invisible? You're the youngest project manager at one of the biggest construction firms in the region, and they acted like you got a gold star in kindergarten." I had no defense for my parents' behavior. "They've always been this way," I admitted. "Nothing I do will ever measure up to Kyle's achievements." "That's not an achievement issue, Alton," Melissa said flatly. "That's them being terrible parents. My parents would be throwing a party if I got a promotion like yours." She was right, of course. But some childish part of me still craved their approval, still thought if I just worked hard enough, succeeded enough, they might finally see my worth. It was a painful, endless cycle, trying to earn validation that should have been freely given, then feeling the sting of disappointment when it never came. As Kyle progressed through college, with constant praise and financial support, I continued building my career one project at a time. I worked overtime, saved money, took on the most challenging projects to build my reputation, and studied for additional certifications. Melissa and I moved in together to save on rent, living in a small one-bedroom apartment, all we could afford with her nursing school costs and my modest salary. My parents never visited. "That neighborhood isn't really our scene," my mother said when I invited them. What she meant was it wasn't affluent enough for their taste. Instead, they expected us to drive to them, always scheduling around Kyle's availability. The Thanksgiving before Kyle's graduation, my parents spent the entire meal discussing his job prospects. Multiple Wall Street firms were courting him. He'd have his pick of six-figure starting positions. My father was practically salivating. "Just think," he said, pouring more wine. "Our son could be making more his first year out of college than most people make after a decade in their careers." I sat silently, pushing food around my plate, feeling Melissa's hand squeeze mine under the table. I'd recently secured my contractor's license and was developing a business plan to start my own company, but I didn't bother sharing. What was the point? By the time I was 28, I took the leap. Alton's Custom Construction was born, with nothing but my savings, a used truck, and a garage full of tools. The early days were brutal. Constant stress about finding clients, covering expenses, handling all the admin myself while still actually doing the construction. Melissa, now a registered nurse at Pittsburgh Children's Hospital, supported us financially during those lean first months. We'd been married in a small ceremony the year before. Nothing fancy, just close friends in a park, a reception at our favorite restaurant. My parents attended, but left early, citing a prior commitment. Kyle couldn't make it at all, something about an important networking event in New York. Starting a business without family support was harder than I'd imagined. Other contractors I knew had fathers or uncles who co-signed loans, provided equipment, shared contacts. I had none of that. Every bank loan application felt like begging. Every cold call to potential clients left me sweating. Every night, I'd lie awake, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. But slowly, through sheer persistence and quality work, I started building a reputation. My first big break came when I renovated a bathroom for a local doctor who was so impressed he recommended me to several colleagues. Soon, I was specializing in high-end custom renovations, the kind of detailed work that required skill and creativity, not just basic construction. Kyle, meanwhile, had graduated with honors and landed a position at a prestigious financial firm in Manhattan. His starting salary was indeed six figures plus a signing bonus. My parents couldn't stop talking about it. Every conversation somehow circled back to Kyle's amazing new life in New York. 6 months after Kyle started his job, my parents invited us over for dinner. Melissa almost refused to go. By this point, she was thoroughly fed up. But I convinced her it would be easier just to make an appearance. What I didn't expect was the announcement my father made over dessert. "We have some exciting news," he said, raising his glass. "Your mother and I have decided to help Kyle purchase his first home. The real estate market in New York is competitive, but we've set aside $120,000 for his down payment. He's already looking at some wonderful condos in Manhattan." The table fell silent. I stared at my father, waiting for the second part of the announcement. The part where they mentioned helping their other son, too. It never came. "What about Alton?" Melissa finally asked, her voice tight with controlled anger. My parents looked confused, as if they'd forgotten I might have housing needs, too. "What about him?" my father asked. "We've been saving for a down payment for 3 years," Melissa explained. "Alton's business is growing, but we're still living in a tiny apartment because housing prices keep rising faster than we can save." My father's expression hardened. Kyle has positioned himself for success in a demanding field. He needs to live in an appropriate neighborhood to maintain professional connections. And what Alton's doing isn't demanding, isn't successful. Melissa shot back. "That's different," my mother interjected smoothly. "Kyle has a real career. Alton chose an alternative path." I found my voice at last. "Are you planning to help us with a down payment, too? Even a fraction of what you're giving Kyle would make a huge difference for us." My father set down his wine glass with a sharp click. "Why would we reward failure? Kyle made something of himself. He went to a top university, secured a prestigious position, and is moving up in the world. You chose to work with your hands rather than your mind. You made your bed, now lie in it. The words hit me like physical blows. Failure. After all my hard work, all the obstacles I'd overcome without their help, they still saw me as a failure. Richard, my mother gasped, though whether she was shocked by his cruelty or his bluntness wasn't clear. What? It's the truth, my father continued. One son followed our guidance and is succeeding. The other rejected our advice and is struggling. Actions have consequences. Melissa stood so abruptly her chair nearly toppled. Your son is not a failure. He built a business from nothing. He works harder than anyone I've ever known. His clients respect him. His employees admire him. The only people who can't see his worth are the two people who should have been his biggest supporters. She grabbed her purse. We're leaving now. The drive home was silent for the first 10 minutes. Then Melissa exploded. That's it. We're done with them. I won't sit by and watch them treat you like this anymore. They're toxic, Alton. Plain and simple. Part of me wanted to agree immediately, to cut them off completely. But decades of seeking their approval had created deep grooves in my psyche. Maybe I should try one more time to talk to them, I suggested. Melissa sighed, her anger giving way to sadness. Honey, they understand. They just don't care. They value degrees and job titles over character and hard work. Nothing you say will change that. Still, I couldn't let go without one final attempt. The next day, I called my mother and asked to meet for coffee, just the two of us. Surprisingly, she agreed. At the coffee shop, I tried to explain how hurtful my father's words had been, how their constant favoritism had affected me, how I'd accomplished so much despite their lack of support. My mother listened with a placid expression, occasionally sipping her latte. When I finished, she set down her cup. You've always been too sensitive, Alton. Your father was just being honest. If you feel like we favor Kyle, it's because he's followed a more successful path. If you had tried harder in school, maybe things would be different. Tried harder? I repeated, incredulous. Mom, I worked through college. I built a business from scratch. I've never once asked you for money until now. And I'm not even asking for charity, just the same support you're giving Kyle. It's not the same, she insisted. Kyle's money is an investment in his future. He has real potential. I stared at her, finally seeing the truth I'd been avoiding my entire life. My parents would never see my worth. In their eyes, I would always be the lesser son, the disappointment, the failure, no matter what I achieved. I see, I said quietly. Thank you for making your position so clear. That evening, Melissa held me as I finally mourned the parental relationship I'd never had and never would have. We're going to be okay, she whispered. We'll build our own family, one built on unconditional love. The next morning, I made my decision. I would stop calling my parents, stop visiting, stop trying to earn the unearnable. If they wanted a relationship with me, they would have to take the first step, and it would have to include recognition of how they'd hurt me and a genuine change in their behavior. That was the last meaningful conversation I had with my parents. For the next 2 years, our only interaction was brief, cold exchanges at the occasional family event we both attended. They never called to check on me. They never seemed to notice my absence. After cutting contact, I felt a strange mix of grief and liberation. The grief was for the relationship I'd always wanted but never had. The liberation came from finally stopping the endless cycle of seeking approval that would never come. Melissa noticed the change in me almost immediately. You stand taller, she observed one morning. Like you've put down a heavy backpack you've been carrying for years. I channeled my complicated emotions into my work, taking on more challenging projects and pushing myself to expand my skills. My 3-year business plan became a 1-year sprint. I hired my first employee, a talented carpenter named James, who brought fresh ideas. Soon after, I added a second, Miguel, a master tile setter whose detailed work became one of our company's signature features. Finding a mentor proved crucial during this growth phase. Frank Donovan, a 67-year-old contractor who'd run a successful business for over 40 years, met me when I bid on his daughter's house. Rather than seeing me as competition, Frank saw potential. He started inviting me to lunch, sharing insights about business management, client relations, and the technical aspects of larger projects. You've got good hands and a good head, Frank told me. That's rare in this business. Most have one or the other, not both. When Frank mentioned he was considering retirement, he made an unexpected offer. I'd like you to consider buying my business when the time comes. My son's not interested, and I'd rather see it go to someone who'll maintain our quality." This was a game changer. Frank's business was well established, specializing in high-end custom homes. Exactly the direction I wanted to take my company. We began discussing a gradual transition plan. Around this time, a unique property came up for sale, a 5-acre parcel just outside the city limits, at a remarkably low price because of access challenges. It was beautiful, partially wooded, with a natural clearing, but the steep access road needed significant work to be passable year-round. Most buyers were deterred, but I saw potential. It was 15 minutes from downtown Pittsburgh, but felt completely secluded. The price was less than half the market rate for comparable lots. Most importantly, I could envision exactly what I wanted to build there. Not just a home, but a statement of my craft and vision. I took a calculated risk, leveraging every asset I had to secure a loan for the land. Melissa was nervous but supportive. "If anyone can make that property work, it's you," she said. The first 6 months were backbreaking. I spent every weekend and many evenings after work clearing the land and improving the access road. Frank lent me his bulldozer, teaching me to operate it. James and Miguel often joined me on Saturdays, working for nothing but beer and barbecue because they believed in the vision, too. During weekdays, I focused on growing the business, taking on increasingly prestigious renovation projects. Nights were spent at the kitchen table, drafting plans for our future home, a modern craftsman design that would showcase sustainable building techniques and custom woodwork. By the 1-year mark after cutting ties with my parents, Alton's custom construction had grown to 5 full-time employees and a steady stream of high-end projects. We'd completed the access road to our property and poured the foundation for our home. I was working 14-hour days, exhausted but deeply satisfied in a way I'd never felt before. Melissa had been promoted to charge nurse, which improved our financial situation, but we still lived frugally, saving every possible penny to pour into the land and the business. While Kyle posted photos on social media of exotic vacations and expensive restaurants, we spent our rare free days working on our property, picnicking on the half-finished deck that would eventually become our outdoor living space. The irony wasn't lost on me. Kyle, with his prestigious degree and high-paying job, was still dependent on our parents for housing. Meanwhile, I was building something truly mine, something tangible and lasting, without a penny of family support. The design for our home became my obsession. A 2-story, 3,000-square-foot craftsman with an open floor plan, huge windows overlooking the wooded property, and custom details throughout. The main floor featured soaring ceilings with exposed timber beams I'd hand-selected and finished. The kitchen showcased cabinetry I built myself from walnut harvested from our own land. At the far end of the property, I designed a separate workshop and showroom where clients could see material samples, review plans, and watch demonstrations. This became the new headquarters for Alton's custom construction, allowing us to present a more professional image. Building our dream while running a growing business meant progress was slower than I'd hoped. There were nights I came home so physically exhausted I could barely eat. There were mornings I could hardly move from muscle soreness. But seeing the structure take shape, knowing that every detail reflected my vision and craftsmanship, made the struggle worthwhile. Financial stress remained a constant companion. A major commercial client delayed payment for 3 months, forcing us to take out a short-term loan. A sudden price increase in lumber added thousands to our home building costs. Melissa's car needed an expensive transmission repair. Each challenge tested our resolve, but we faced them together, adjusting our plans and pushing forward. The turning point came 18 months after the land purchase. A prominent local surgeon hired us to renovate his entire home, a 6-month project that would provide steady work for the whole team. The budget was generous, allowing me to hire 2 more skilled workers and still maintain a healthy profit margin. Even better, the client gave us creative freedom. This project became our calling card. Architectural Digest featured it in a regional issue, highlighting our innovative storage solutions and custom furniture pieces. Suddenly, our phone was ringing off the hook. We had the luxury of being selective, choosing projects that aligned with our strengths. By the 2-year mark after cutting ties with my parents, our personal home was nearing completion. The exterior was finished, a stunning combination of stone, cedar siding, and metal accents that blended with the natural surroundings while making a bold architectural statement. Inside, we were completing the final details. Light fixtures, hardware, the last coats of finish on custom-built tints. Our business had grown to 8 employees, with a reputation as one of the premier custom builders in the region. The workshop and showroom had become a destination for clients wanting to see our craftsmanship firsthand. I'd even begun discussions with Frank about accelerating our transition plan, as his health concerns were making him eager to retire sooner. Through it all, my parents remained silent. They made no attempts to contact me, apparently content to have just one son in their lives. Kyle and I spoke occasionally, but our conversations were superficial. He seemed uncomfortable discussing our parents' favoritism, and I had stopped expecting him to understand my perspective. What I didn't realize was that everything was about to change, triggered by a simple wrong turn on a country road. It was a Tuesday afternoon in May when my life took another unexpected turn. I was in the workshop with James, finalizing designs for a custom entertainment center, when my phone buzzed with an incoming call from Kyle. We hadn't spoken in almost 2 months, so seeing his name was surprising. "Kyle, everything okay?" I answered, stepping outside for privacy. "Alton, what the hell? When were you going to tell me?" His voice was a strange mixture of shock, anger, and something else I couldn't quite identify. "Tell you what, I genuinely had no idea. I just drove past your property. I was meeting a client who lives out that way and got turned around. I saw the sign for Alton's Custom Construction and nearly crashed my car doing a double take." I leaned against the workshop wall, suddenly understanding. Kyle had no idea what I'd built. As far as he knew, I was still running a small contracting business and living in that tiny apartment. "Yeah, we moved out here about 1.5 years ago. Been building the place ourselves." 1.5 years? And you never thought to mention you bought 5 acres and built what looks like a magazine-worthy home, plus that massive workshop. What the hell, Alton? I had no idea. There was a pause, and then Kyle's voice changed. I heard him say, "Dad, you need to see what Alton has built. It's unbelievable." "No, I'm serious. The property is amazing." I realized he'd called our father while still parked outside my property. A familiar knot formed in my stomach. "Hey, can I come by later?" Kyle asked, returning to our conversation. "I'd love to see the place up close." "I'm genuinely blown away, bro." I hesitated, but agreed. Kyle had never been the source of the problem, just the beneficiary of our parents' warped values. "Sure. Melissa will be home from her shift around 6. Come by after that if you want." When Kyle's Audi pulled up our driveway that evening, I was waiting on the front porch. He stepped out and stood for a long moment, taking in the house and grounds with an expression of disbelief. "This is incredible, Alton. You built this yourself?" "With my team, yeah. We did most of the work ourselves." "Come on in." I gave him the tour. The open-concept main floor with its vaulted ceilings and exposed beams, the chef's kitchen with custom cabinetry, the primary suite with its spa-like bathroom. Throughout the house, the craftsmanship spoke for itself. Kyle was uncharacteristically quiet, taking it all in. When we reached the back deck overlooking the wooded property, he finally spoke. "I had no idea, Alton. All this time I thought. I don't even know what I thought." "What did our parents tell you about my business?" I asked, curious about the narrative they'd created. Kyle looked uncomfortable. "They always made it sound like you were struggling, doing small handyman jobs. Dad referred to it as your little construction thing. I just assumed that I was failing." The old hurt surfaced briefly. "Yeah," Kyle admitted, looking ashamed. "I feel terrible now. This is success by anyone's definition. You've created something extraordinary." Melissa joined us with drinks, and we sat on the deck as the sun began to set. The conversation shifted to Kyle's life, and for the first time, I sensed something wasn't right beneath his seemingly perfect exterior. "The firm's pushing for partnership track, which means even longer hours," he said, staring into his glass. "The mortgage on my place is brutal, even with Mom and Dad's help. Manhattan real estate, you know." "Are you happy?" Melissa asked directly, always the one to cut through pretense. Kyle looked startled, as if happiness had never been a consideration. I don't know. I'm successful. Isn't that the same thing?" "Not even close," I said quietly. We talked for hours that night, really talked for the first time in years. Kyle admitted he'd been living on anti-anxiety medication for the past year, trying to cope with the crushing pressure of his job. His girlfriend had recently broken up with him, saying she never saw him anyway. His apartment, despite being a prestigious address, felt like nothing more than an expensive hotel room. "I've never built anything," he said, gesturing toward the house. "Never created anything permanent. I move numbers from one column to another, making rich people richer. At the end of the day, what do I have to show for it?" When he left that night, something had shifted between us. The wall of different values and parental favoritism had cracked, allowing a glimpse of the brotherhood we might have had without our parents' toxic influence. The next morning, my phone rang again, my father's name appearing on the screen. It had been 2 years since we'd had any direct communication. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Hello." I kept my tone neutral. "Your brother tells me you've done well for yourself," my father said without preamble. "Your mother and I would like to come see this property of yours." No greeting, no acknowledgement of our estrangement. Typical. "Why now?" I asked. "You haven't shown any interest in my life for 2 years. Don't be dramatic, Alton. We've been busy, and you chose to distance yourself. Are we welcome to visit or not?" I should have said no, but some small part of me, that child still seeking parental approval, couldn't resist the opportunity to finally show them what I'd accomplished without their help. Fine. Saturday at noon. When my parents' Mercedes pulled up our driveway that Saturday, I was reminded of how little they'd changed. My father, impeccably dressed in casual designer clothes that probably cost more than one of my employees' monthly salaries. My mother, perfectly coiffed and accessorized, as always. Their expressions as they took in the property were almost comical, shock poorly disguised as casual interest. My mother immediately began taking photos with her phone. "Well," my father said, clearing his throat, "this is certainly substantial." Kyle wasn't exaggerating. "Would you like a tour?" I offered, maintaining a calm exterior while emotions churned inside me. They followed me through the house, my mother making little appreciative sounds at the kitchen and master bathroom. My father asked surprisingly detailed questions about construction techniques and materials, revealing more knowledge than I'd realized he possessed. In the great room, my mother paused by a built-in display cabinet showcasing some of my woodworking pieces. "These are lovely, Alton. You made these?" "Yes, all of them." "You always were good with your hands," she said, as if this were a fact she'd acknowledged all along, rather than a talent they'd dismissed for decades. We ended in the workshop and showroom, where examples of our custom work and photo albums of completed projects were displayed. A wall of framed press clippings, including the Architectural Digest feature, hung prominently. "Your business seems to be doing well," my father observed, studying the photos. "How many employees do you have now?" 8 full-time, plus subcontractors for specialized work. "We're booked solid for the next 18 months. "That's impressive," he admitted grudgingly. "I suppose you found your niche." My mother was flipping through one of our project albums. "These homes are in Grandview Estates. The Hendersons live there. They're in my garden club. Did you work on their house?" "We renovated their kitchen and master bath last year." Her eyes widened. "Really?" Margaret raved about their renovation. "I had no idea that was your work." Something in me snapped. After years of diminishment, here they were, suddenly interested now that they realized my work might impress their social circle. Now that they understood I hadn't failed. After all, they wanted to claim connection. "Let me ask you something," I said, my voice deceptively calm. "If I'd stayed in that apartment, if my business had remained small, would you be here today?" My father frowned. "What kind of question is that?" "A simple one. If Kyle hadn't driven by and seen this place, would you have ever reached out to me? Would you have ever tried to understand my life?" "You're the one who stopped calling," my mother said defensively. "After you made it abundantly clear that nothing I did would ever be good enough," I retorted. "After Dad called me a failure to my face. After you gave Kyle $120,000 for a down payment while telling me I didn't deserve your help because I chose the wrong career." My father's expression hardened. "You're being oversensitive. We supported Kyle because he followed the path we laid out for him. You chose differently. And that's exactly the problem," I said, my voice rising. "Your love, your support, your respect, all conditional on following your narrow definition of success. Do you have any idea what it feels like to grow up knowing nothing you do will ever be good enough? To have your achievements dismissed because they don't fit your parents' preconceived notions of what matters?" My mother's eyes filled with tears. "That's not fair, Alton. We always wanted what was best for you." "No," I shot back. "You wanted what you thought was best for your image. You were embarrassed by my career choice. You couldn't brag about me at your country club like you could about Kyle, the Princeton graduate. It was never about my happiness or my talents. It was about how my life reflected on you. My father's face had reddened dangerously. We gave you everything growing up. A good home, opportunities to be like Kyle. Never opportunities to be myself. I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. You know what the sad part is? If you'd supported me even a fraction as much as you supported him, I would have included you in all this. I gestured to the property around us. You could have been part of building this dream. Instead, you're just visitors, gawking at what your failure son managed to create without you. I think we should go, my father said stiffly. You clearly have some unresolved issues to work through. My mother looked torn, her social mask cracking slightly. Alton, I didn't realize you felt this way. Perhaps we could talk more about this another time. What's there to talk about? I asked. Has anything I've said today actually penetrated? Do you understand how deeply you hurt me? Do you even care? When neither of them answered immediately, I had my response. That's what I thought. You're welcome to see yourselves out. As they walked to their car, I heard my father mutter, ungrateful, after everything we've done, confirming that nothing I'd said had made any difference. They simply couldn't see beyond their own narrative. What I didn't expect was that Kyle had arrived during our confrontation and had been standing just outside the workshop door, hearing the entire exchange. As my parents' Mercedes disappeared down the driveway, Kyle stepped into view. His expression was complicated, part embarrassment, part sadness, part something I couldn't quite identify. How long have you been standing there? I asked. Long enough, he replied, shoving his hands in his pockets. Can we talk? We walked toward the creek that ran along the edge of the property, following a path I'd cleared through the woods. Neither of us spoke until we reached a small bench I'd built overlooking the water. They really don't get it, do they? Kyle finally said. They never have. They never will. Kyle picked up a stone and tossed it into the water. I owe you an apology, Alton. I knew they favored me, but I never stood up for you. I just accepted it as normal, even when it wasn't. I shrugged. You were a kid, too. It wasn't your responsibility to fix our parents. Still, he threw another stone. I should have seen what it was doing to you. The truth is, I was scared to rock the boat. Their approval felt so conditional that I was terrified of losing it. And now? I asked. Kyle turned to face me directly. Now I'm drowning, Alton. That perfect life they wanted for me. It's killing me slowly. What followed was a confession I never expected from my seemingly perfect brother. Kyle revealed he was deeply in debt, despite his high salary and our parents' help. His Manhattan apartment had a mortgage that consumed nearly 60% of his monthly income. The prestigious address came with expectations, designer clothes, expensive restaurants, exclusive clubs that drained his remaining funds. I'm working 80-hour weeks just to maintain the illusion that I'm living the dream, he admitted. I haven't had a full night's sleep in months. My doctor says my blood pressure is dangerously high for someone my age. Worse than the financial strain was the spiritual emptiness. Kyle described his work as morally bankrupt, helping wealthy clients exploit tax loopholes, sometimes pushing the boundaries of legality. His firm's culture was cutthroat, with colleagues more likely to sabotage than support one another. My girlfriend didn't just leave because I was never home, he confessed. She left because when I was home, I was a shell, anxious, irritable, completely emotionally unavailable. The last thing she said to me was that I'd become a soulless corporate drone with nothing to offer but a good income. The worst part is, she was right. As Kyle continued talking, Melissa joined us, bringing drinks and sitting quietly beside me. Her presence seemed to encourage Kyle to open up even more. You know what I thought when I saw your place yesterday? Kyle asked. I wasn't just impressed. I was jealous. Deeply, profoundly jealous. Not of the house itself, though it's amazing, but of the life it represents. You built something real. You have purpose. You come home exhausted because you've created something, not because you've been manipulated and manipulated others all day. Melissa spoke up. What would you do if you could start over? If our parents' expectations weren't a factor? Kyle laughed humorlessly. That's the sad part. I have no idea. I've spent so long being what they wanted that I don't know who I am anymore. I studied my brother, seeing him clearly, perhaps for the first time. Beyond the designer clothes and perfect haircut was a deeply unhappy man who traded his authentic self for external validation. It's not too late to change course, I said. You're only 31. And do what? He asked. I have a finance degree and 7 years of experience moving money around. What real skills do I actually have? An idea began forming in my mind. You've always been good with numbers, organization. The business side of construction is growing faster than I can manage it. I need someone who understands financials, who can help with business development while I focus on the craftsmanship. Kyle stared at me. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a fresh start. Lower salary initially, but better hours, meaningful work, and the chance to help build something tangible. Plus, the guest house is available until you find your feet. You do that? After everything? He asked, disbelief in his voice. You're not responsible for our parents' failures, Kyle. And you're still my brother. That evening, the three of us talked for hours, strategizing what Kyle's transition might look like. He'd need to sell his overpriced apartment, pay down debt, and accept a significant lifestyle adjustment. But with each potential obstacle we addressed, I saw more life returning to my brother's eyes. 2 weeks later, we hosted a backyard barbecue to celebrate Melissa's birthday. Kyle came, of course, and brought a friend from his college days who lived in Pittsburgh. To my surprise, my parents accepted the invitation as well, apparently deciding to ignore our confrontation rather than address it. As we gathered around the patio table, Kyle cleared his throat and raised his glass. I have an announcement to make. I've decided to make some changes in my life. I've put my apartment on the market, and I've given notice at the firm. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. What? Why would you do that? Your position is so prestigious. Because I'm not happy, Mom. I haven't been happy for years, actually. My father's face darkened. This is ridiculous. You don't throw away a career like yours because of some temporary dissatisfaction. Everyone has bad days at work. It's not temporary, Dad. And it's not just bad days. I'm miserable. My health is suffering, and I've realized there are more important things in life than prestige. What will you do instead? My mother asked, clearly struggling to maintain her composure. Kyle took a deep breath. I'm joining Alton's company. I'll be handling the business operations while he focuses on the construction side. The silence that followed was absolute. My father's face went through a remarkable series of expressions: shock, disbelief, anger, before settling on something close to disgust. You can't be serious, he finally said. Throwing away an Ivy League education to work for your brother's little construction company? This is absurd. Kyle straightened his shoulders. Actually, it's not little at all. Alton's built something remarkable here. His company has a wait list of clients, profiles in major publications, and a reputation for exceptional quality. I'll learn more about real business working with him than I ever did shuffling papers on Wall Street. This is your influence, my mother accused, turning to me. You filled his head with nonsense because you're jealous of his success. Melissa laughed out loud. Jealous? Have you looked around you at what your failure son has built while you were busy bragging about Kyle at your country club? Alton doesn't need to be jealous of anyone. My father pushed back his chair. I won't support this foolishness. Kyle, if you go through with this, don't expect any more financial assistance from us. No more help with your mortgage. No more covering your credit card when you overspend. For the first time I could remember, Kyle didn't back down under our father's disapproval. That's fine, Dad. I'm 31 years old. It's time I stood on my own 2 feet anyway, like Alton has been doing since he was 18. You'll regret this, my father warned, standing up. Both of you. Come, Elaine. We're leaving. My mother hesitated, looking between her sons with genuine confusion, as if unable to compute what was happening. Then she stood and followed my father to their car. As the sound of their engine faded, Kyle released a shaky breath. Well, that went about as well as expected. I clapped him on the shoulder. Welcome to the world of parental disappointment. First time's the hardest. Does it get easier? He asked. Not easier, exactly. You just stop measuring your worth by their approval. The transformation in Kyle over the following weeks was remarkable. He sold his Manhattan apartment for a slight profit, paid off his credit card debt, and moved into our guest house. He bought sensible, comfortable clothes to replace his designer wardrobe. He started jogging on the trails I'd cleared through our property. The perpetual dark circles under his eyes began to fade. His first week working at Alton's custom construction was a steep learning curve. I started him with basic tasks, organizing project files, updating our accounting system, creating a more efficient scheduling process. Despite his Ivy League degree, Kyle approached each task with humility, asking questions and admitting when he didn't understand something. What surprised me most was discovering Kyle's natural aptitude for aspects of the business I'd been neglecting. He completely redesigned our client proposal process, making it more professional. He identified inefficiencies in our material ordering that were costing us thousands. He developed relationships with suppliers that resulted in better terms and priority delivery. One evening, about a month after he joined the company, I took Kyle to the workshop and handed him a hammer. "What's this for?" he asked. "Time you learn the basics of what we actually do. You can't run the business side effectively if you don't understand the craft." I started him with simple tasks: measuring, cutting, basic joinery. His first attempts were clumsy, as expected, but he approached learning with the same intensity he'd once directed at his corporate career. To my surprise, he showed a natural feel for the materials, an intuitive understanding that couldn't be taught. "It's in the blood," I joked as he completed his first solo project, a simple side table with a surprisingly elegant design. "Maybe," Kyle said, running his hand over the finished surface. "Or maybe it's just that this is the first thing I've created that actually exists in the real world, not just as numbers on a spreadsheet." As summer turned to fall, Kyle continued his transformation. He moved out of the guest house into a modest apartment closer to our office. He started dating a veterinarian he met through one of our clients, a down-to-earth woman who seemed genuinely delighted by his newfound authenticity. Most importantly, the haunted look that had become his permanent expression was replaced by something approaching contentment. Our parents maintained their distance, true to their threat. Occasionally, we'd receive stiff, formal texts from our mother, but no acknowledgment of the rift or attempts to repair it. It was as if they were waiting for Kyle to fail, to come crawling back, admitting he'd made a terrible mistake. Instead, Kyle thrived. By the 6-month mark, his contributions had allowed us to take on 20% more projects while maintaining our quality standards. His business acumen complemented my craftsmanship in ways I hadn't anticipated. We weren't just brothers anymore. We were becoming true partners. The following spring brought unexpected news. Melissa was pregnant with our first child. We'd been trying for nearly a year, and the positive test brought a joy I hadn't known was possible. Kyle was equally excited about becoming an uncle, immediately beginning plans for a custom crib he insisted on building himself. "You've taught me enough basics that I should be able to manage something that won't collapse," he joked, already sketching designs based on Scandinavian models he'd researched. Our business continued to flourish. Frank had officially retired, selling me his client list and referring his long-term customers to our company. We'd grown to 12 full-time employees and moved into a larger workshop space, though we maintained the showroom on our property for its picturesque setting. The most significant development came when a regional home design magazine featured one of our recent projects, a complete renovation of a historic craftsman home that had required both innovative solutions and respect for the original architecture. The 8-page spread showcased our work in stunning detail, with particular focus on the custom cabinetry and built-ins that had become our signature. The article mentioned my background, describing how I'd built the business from scratch without family support or connections. It highlighted our company's rapid growth and the recent addition of my brother to the management team. The writer even included photos of our personal home, calling it a testament to the owner's vision and craftsmanship. The magazine hit newsstands on a Wednesday. By Thursday evening, I received an unexpected text from my mother. "Saw the article. Your father and I would like to attend the project showcase mentioned for next month. Is that acceptable?" I showed the message to Melissa and Kyle, unsure how to respond. Neither of my parents had made any meaningful attempt to understand our perspective or acknowledge their hurtful behavior. This sudden interest felt opportunistic rather than genuine. "They just want to be associated with your success now that it's publicly recognized," Melissa said, never one to mince words. Kyle was more measured. "That's probably part of it, but maybe it's also a small step toward reconnection. They're proud, but they're not completely heartless." "After consideration," I replied. "The showcase is open to the public. You're welcome to attend." Neutral, neither encouraging nor discouraging their presence. The project showcase was held at a recently completed luxury mountain home we'd built from the ground up, a $4 million property featuring custom everything. Over 200 people attended, including potential clients, industry professionals, and media. I was in the great room, explaining the reclaimed timber ceiling beams to an interested couple when I saw my parents enter. They were impeccably dressed, as always, my mother wearing a new designer outfit that probably cost more than some people's monthly mortgage. Throughout the evening, they circulated, stopping to examine details and occasionally engaging in conversation. I noticed my mother showing several people the magazine article on her phone, pointing me out across the room with an expression that could almost be described as proud. Kyle managed them masterfully, acting as buffer and guide, showing them features of the home while keeping their interactions with me brief and superficial. It was clear he'd found a new confidence in dealing with our parents, neither seeking their approval nor avoiding their judgment. Near the end of the event, my father approached me alone, a glass of complimentary champagne in his hand. "Impressive work," he said, gesturing to the space around us. The magazine didn't exaggerate. "Thank you," I replied simply. He cleared his throat. "Your mother and I have been thinking. Perhaps we were hasty in our assessment of your career choice." It wasn't an apology, not even close, but it was the nearest thing to an admission of error I'd ever heard from him. "My career choice has worked out well for me," I said. "I'm glad you can see that now." "Yes. Well," he took a sip of champagne. "We'd like to be more involved, if you're amenable. Your mother especially. This grandchild, it's important to her." I studied my father's face, searching for genuine remorse or understanding. What I saw instead was calculation. The recognition that his previous strategy had backfired, and a new approach was needed to maintain social appearances. "Involvement with our child would require rebuilding trust," I said carefully. "That would start with acknowledging the hurt you've caused both to me and to Kyle." My father's expression hardened slightly. "The past is the past, Alton. Everyone makes mistakes. We should focus on moving forward." And there it was, the fundamental disconnect. In his mind, the problem wasn't their conditional love or harmful behavior. It was simply that they'd backed the wrong son in their calculations of success. Now that I'd proven successful by external measures, they were willing to recalibrate their investment. "Moving forward requires understanding what went wrong," I replied. "When you and Mom are ready to have that conversation, honestly, we can talk about next steps. Until then, you're welcome at public events like this one, but our relationship will remain limited." He nodded stiffly and walked away, rejoining my mother across the room. I saw him speaking to her, saw her glance my way with a mixture of confusion and hurt, as if I were the unreasonable one for not immediately welcoming them back without conditions. Later that night, as Melissa and I prepared for bed, I felt a surprising sense of peace rather than the turmoil such encounters had previously caused. "You okay?" Melissa asked, noting my thoughtful expression. "Better than okay, actually." For the first time, I faced them without feeling like that desperate kid seeking approval. I saw them clearly. Flawed people who cannot give what they don't possess themselves. Melissa rested her head on my shoulder. "That's called growth, babe. Hard-earned growth." The next morning, Kyle came over early to continue work on the baby's crib. We set up in the workshop, the spring air flowing through the open doors as we measured, cut, and sanded the maple pieces he'd selected. "Mom called me last night after the showcase," Kyle said casually, checking a joint for fit. "She doesn't understand why you're being difficult about reconciliation." I shook my head. Of course she doesn't. I tried explaining to her that it's not about punishment, but about protecting yourself from people who've proven they can't see your worth. I'm not sure it got through, but I tried. I glanced at my brother, this man who'd transformed himself from the golden child to a genuine human being with depth and perspective. "When did you get so wise?" Kyle laughed. "Around the time I admitted how completely I'd screwed up my life following their blueprint for success. Nothing like total failure to teach you what actually matters." As we worked side by side on the crib that would hold my child, his niece or nephew, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. The pain of parental rejection had been excruciating, but it had also freed me to build a life based on my own values rather than inherited ones. "You know what I want most for this kid?" I said, running my hand over a freshly sanded rail. "To know they're valuable simply for existing, not for what they achieve. That their worth isn't measured by degrees or job titles or income brackets. They'll know," Kyle assured me, "because that's how you and Melissa will parent. You'll break the cycle." That evening, standing on our deck, watching the sunset over the property we'd transformed from raw land to our sanctuary, I felt a profound gratitude. The path hadn't been easy, but it had been mine. Every struggle, every triumph, every conscious choice to value craftsmanship over prestige, authenticity over appearance. True success, I'd learned, wasn't about impressing others or accumulating status symbols. It was about creating a life that reflected your deepest values, surrounding yourself with people who saw and appreciated your authentic self, and building something meaningful that outlasted the workday. My parents had given me an unintended gift, the opportunity to define success on my own terms. By withdrawing their support and approval, they'd forced me to find strength within myself rather than seeking external validation. That lesson would guide how I parented my own child, how I mentored my employees, how I moved through the world. Remember, the most beautiful foundations are sometimes built on the pain of being underestimated. Find the courage to build your life on your terms, not someone else's.